lawsuit.
That's why
Tom
you need
Baker
a lawsuit.
read?
That's what the lawsuit is about. It is the only place really in society where someone who is seriously injured is going to get a full and complete hearing with both sides presented and with witnesses heard on what really happened. And often the medical records are simply inadequate to determine
But Mike,
that.
you can understand, Mike, why a doctor has that fear, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, he spent 6 years of his life, 6 weeks of his life in a courtroom, finally were dropped for a case. Maybe Scandinavia's got it, right?
Well, you know what? I think one of Bob's suggestions, as I understand it in your book, I think would go a long way to alleviate this problem, and that is to have institutional responsibility in these cases.
That doesn't address the issue of cost, though.
No, it doesn't. We're talking about fear now. We're talking about fear, and if fear, and it will address the issue of cost insofar as your claim regarding defensive medicine is concerned. Because because if you're not afraid of being sued, you're certainly not going to start performing the tests that Bob claims people do perform.
Would you say administrative? What kind of insurance?
If you had an institutional responsibility, and I think that's a very valid and very good idea. For example, let me give you a great example. I know you probably read the New Yorker magazine piece by Gawande.
Yes.
And what he did is he was concerned about the cost of medical care. So he went to the place in the United States which had the highest medical care in the country, a place called McAllen, Texas.
Yeah, Medicare.
You probably read that, Ed.
Yeah,
and what he found is that the doctors there were sending patients to one another, were performing a lot of unnecessary tests, a lot of unnecessary procedures, to own their own hospital, and that was giving rise to this exorbitant medical care. He asked one of the doctors, well, I thought you were doing all this because of defensive medicine. The doctor said that was just a lot of bull, because in Texas, they've basically eliminated the right of patients to sue altogether. He then went to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, some of the best medical care in the country. It's also the cheapest. Doctors there do not perform unnecessary tests. They do not practice defensive medicine, and it has a full malpractice system.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because by the time you get to the Mayo Clinic, you've been so worked up on the outside.
The Mayo Clinic works very well. There is a lot of unnecessary care here driven by the entrepreneurship of physicians. But there is also unnecessary care driven by defensive medicine. That also plays a role. And I think the whole system has to change. One of the things which we really haven't addressed is this litigation support industry, the expert witnesses that play such a large role in malpractice cases.
Are they tightening that up?
No.
I would say it's gone to the point almost of witness intimidation in some areas. In some limited areas.
The neurosurgeons.
Neurosurgeons and
they're afraid to testify as a witness.
Yeah, they're afraid to testify. But Bob, let me ask you this. If you found a case that you felt was meritorious, will you go into court and testify against another doctor in Connecticut?
Yes, I would. I would, and I know a lot of my peers would also if they felt it was reasonable. Okay.
Okay.
You know,
you came on the show and you're getting somewhere.
part of the problem, a lot of doctors won't testify because they feel the system is not fair. It's skewed against them. If they felt the system was equitable, they would absolutely be willing to testify, and they would absolutely be willing to judge cases. That's why I feel the first step has to be a peer review of cases to decide whether or not malpractice has occurred. And this peer review can occur with both a defense and plaintiff's attorney presenting the cases, but presenting it to people who will understand the complicated problems that occur in this case. And so that they could screen out these mal-occurrences which make up a significant percentage of cases. And you know, a lot of the malpractice attorneys say, well, it works well for the vast majority of patients, and it does. But if 30% or 20% or a significant percentage of patients get awarded when they have no medical negligence, and the opposite occurs where people who have gone through medical negligence and are not awarded, the system is not working if you have a significant percentage where it doesn't work for them. And I think if you go to an expert peer review first, and these peers say that negligence has occurred, you're going to have the cases settled for the most part. People are going to be unwilling to take that to court. That's going to make a big difference in how the system works.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, I think there are possibilities along those lines. There are different states.
Which we're working on.
We've been working on that in Connecticut.
Yeah.
There are states that have them where they don't work because they end up being very costly, time-consuming, and you were complaining about the delay. And getting people together is a delay. Finding doctors who are going to serve on these panels, having it take place, all of that's delay and cost. So you got to balance that off against possible savings. And also you got to make sure that it's a fair panel and that all the parties are represented. Some states, as I say, have done it well, some haven't, and the devil is in the details on that.
Who pays for it?
Wait. Yes, part of costs. To defend myself and my partner with our expert witnesses and all the 6 years of depositions and things, it cost our insurance company $350,000. Now, we didn't pay anything. We got off scot-free, so to speak. But that money is reflected in everyone else's malpractice insurance. It goes up for everyone else. So the system is not fair. My insurance company can't recover any of the money that they spent in defending a case that was not meritorious.
It's a problem. Well, let me ask both of you fellas. How about I understand in Norway, Denmark, Finland, they have like a workman's comp, where the doctor, if I commit malpractice, I actually go sit down with my patient, this is what I read, actually fill out the form. I cut off the wrong thumb. And we go down to the administration office and get, they have a fixed fee, right? You lose a thumb, it's $200,000, whatever. But, you get the idea. What do you think of that? Would that ever fly in this country?
I don't think it would ever fly, and I think it would be in this country, unless you do something first to control healthcare costs, which would have to be the first step before you can even get to something like that. The cost of that system would be overwhelming. I mean, the one problem we have in our malpractice system, and I think we've got to acknowledge it, is that we cannot service a large number of people who have valid claims. And we can't service it because the value of their claims is too small and the cost of pursuing it is too great. So that's a problem. Theoretically, this system could go towards solving that problem, except that there's too many people. There's too many people to cover for that. It would be enormously expensive.
Because even with a single payer system too.
They have a single payer, but even with reduced payments, and even if you were to take away a lot of the cost of administration, it would be just too expensive.
That's another issue why I think the system doesn't work, and that's the fact that our system doesn't work because administrative costs and attorneys' fees make up about 54% of what the awards are. So only 46% go to the patient when there's been an injury that has occurred. To me, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, how about the pain and suffering? Now, let's just change gears for a little bit. I know that that's what physicians have been complaining about. Mike, pain and suffering, are we exaggerating it when we say, oh, pain and suffering, a physician pays enough for the medical damages. What's with pain and suffering? For the sake of the audience too, of course.
Yes, of course. Well, let's take this.
What's that all about?
A parent loses a child.
Right.
Child dies at age 7 because of a failure to diagnose a very treatable illness, and the child is dead. There's no medical expense except for the funeral costs. What about justice? What about the idea that when a tragedy is caused by the negligence of another, that someone has got to acknowledge and respect that loss? Let me give you another one. A client of mine who underwent what was supposed to be simple laparoscopic procedure.
Right.
And the surgeon sewed up his aorta. Sewed it up. And then sent him into the recovery room with a sewn up aorta. Ended up having both legs amputated above the knee. He was a 29-year-old guy about to get married. He's going to live the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Do you think it's any kind of justice to say to him, we'll take care of your medical care? And what if he already